Those who face eternity easily forget what a lifetime means, what an ending means.
You know it doesn't have to be this way.
No, Kunavang, it does. They need me.
Welcome to End of Dragons Daily, part 33. We are officially over 1 month in, even if you consider the longest months of the year. Today we're going to be talking about End of Dragons. I've got a selection of miscellaneous comments. We will, of course, return to the idea of starter zone leveling and exploration and stuff on the next part, where I have more responses from you guys. Today, just a variety of really cool and interesting different ideas about the X-Pack. And no, we don't have a chipmunk voice today. Sorry, guys. The first one comes from Ecosystem, who says they should remake Claw Island explorable with one meta and allow a few other events or through the next Dragon Response mission, but will permanently explorable in the open world. To which Relzen said that would be cool, although I'm not sure how reasonable it is for Primordus and Jormag to attack there. Well, I think that they could attack anywhere. In fact, one of the ideas I've got for a video right now is to discuss where more Dragon Response missions might appear, and indeed how Dragon Response missions might continue even in the expansion. Like, we've been talking a lot about Living World going away for the X-Pack, but we haven't really talked about, after the X-Pack's out, how long till Living World returns. And I kind of think some Dragon Response missions during the End of Dragons era might also be a really good thing to do, and you could see them around then, especially if the Tengu and stuff is added. The one thing I would like to say, now you guys can find a video on my channel about this, the Delesio Seaboard proposed map, you know, the little section of the world that is hinted at behind a gate at Garenhof, and next to Lion's Arch, and where the Tengu presumably are behind that wall where they fired arrows on people at Lion's Arch, that section of Kryta that is currently unexplorable. When we data mined the devs' plans for that map, it didn't just include the physical territory of the seaboard, it also included a ton of the waterways down south. It was a full-sized map, not just a small slice of terrain. It was one of those maps like Bloodtide Coast, where it was kind of narrow, but very, very long downwards. And what did that mean? That meant that they were planning on Claw Island for the open world at one point. Like, really, you can see a version of Claw Island in the open world. It's very laggy interior 3D, or used to be, because of all the coral that they kind of had just splashed down there and hadn't been crafted or shaped into a real map at that point. So it killed your frames. But they always had an idea of that, and I like the idea of eventually getting to go back there. It's a bit like the Lake Doric thing, you know? It was a map that was in development before launch, got cut, and they found a way to revisit it in the living world. Well, why not the Delesio Seaboard too? And Lake Doric, for what it's worth, when they implemented it in Living World Season 3, it was kind of only a third of a map. The full Lake Doric we haven't got to go to. We've only got to go to a slice. But now, with the mounts and all the Living World maps have been so big, I kind of think they could do that. A Dragon Response mission is a great idea, I think, as well. Especially a Dragon Response mission against minions of the Deep Sea Dragon over at Claw Island. That would be fantastic. You could write any number of reasons for why they attack there. Perhaps the corpse of Blightghast, the Plaguebringer, is still around and there's a bit of residual magic or something. It would be fun. I want to say as well, just the idea of adding new maps as explorables. Like Echo says here that they should add a meta. Weirdly, I don't really care that much about having metas. I don't know, they don't really excite me that much. I haven't been super invested in any of the metas, except the Kraukatoric one, I suppose. For a long time, they're just kind of like reward schemes, really, in a big way. When I'm most excited about new explorable areas, I'm excited about slow, steady-paced, intimate, small-scale map exploration, where you're going inside, like, buildings and crypts and tombs and stuff. Basically, map exploration that you would get leveling. So I'm really excited about these maps being added as leveling zones. Other than that, I don't really care that much. Not anymore. I used to, but not so much these days. And that's totally affected, this is a very personal thing, but that's totally affected some of my outlook on End of Dragons too. Next, Sunny says, love that you did a video with Guild Wars 1 in it. That's exactly what you should show. Oh my god, great idea. Please keep it up and I'd love to play with you. Yeah, I never really mentioned this in the commentary. Today will probably be Guild Wars 2 footage again. But every now and then, yeah, I'll show some Guild Wars 1 stuff, and specifically, obviously, Cantha. I want to show that to you guys. If you look at that footage, like when I was playing that Rich List in that other video, on End of Dragons Daily and you're excited, don't forget there is a very new series that I did less than a year ago playing through factions, like here in the now. And it was specifically about End of Dragons and to talk about what might be coming up. So all of that content is there and I highly encourage you guys to check it out. Hopefully we'll get a Winds of Change playthrough going forwards as well. But yeah, it totally fits, right? I was amazed to see my Guild Wars 1 account doesn't have a rich list on it anymore. What a crying shame, honestly. So I made a new one and that was some of the footage. BXXI says, WP, you've said you think they might add at least one, and maybe hidden and or optional, mount in End of Dragons. What do you think this mount could be? Haven't they covered most of the movement abilities already with the current mounts? Great question. I really do think it is a tough one to answer, especially with the skimmer update. The skimmer going underwater in an update this year was huge, I think, and a big signal that maybe End of Dragons won't have any new mounts. I do find this topic really interesting because sometimes the community, the hive mind, feels really strongly about something, but they don't say it, or they may even say the opposite. And I feel like ArenaNet sometimes sort of gets led into a bit of a trap. Like, for example, with the whole mount skins thing, right? And I've got another comment on mount skins in a second. And again, I really don't want to be the guy that's sitting there defending the gem store and so on. But as an example, before Path of Fire came out, and the idea that mounts were going to be in the expansion was broached, largely due to the leaks and other reasons, people were constantly saying that gem store skins would be amazing and cash cows and the devs could sell them for lots of gems and it would be the greatest thing. I myself even was in that camp. You can probably catch me in a video or two saying, wow, imagine the idea of mount skins, guys. I know I definitely wondered about the idea of Super Adventure Box mount skins at one point before POF. And so then ArenaNet has all like this comfort and understanding that they can be aggressive with the gem store and mount skins. Look, this is what people have been saying. And, you know, there were these huge backlashes. And I'm not just talking about because of the scummy way they did the RNG stuff and bundled things together, which is kind of another separate issue. But just the general practice of selling mount skins, eventually really people sneered on, you know. I think that's happened a lot. People will be very silent even though there's like this thing they'll hate. And so now we come to End of Dragons, and I wonder if we're in a similar situation. Nobody talks about being desperate for a mount, but the idea that the expansion might release with none, is this the kind of thing that people will suddenly reveal that actually they find absolutely disgusting and the game should have added more mounts? Especially from like those more casual silent majority. I think that's going to be interesting to see. As for my specific inspiration on a mount, now that the idea of an underwater specialist is off the cards, I still think that there's an idea of multiplayer mounts. And the devs might be cagey about this because of netcode stuff, obviously, but also multiplayer mounts can be powerful tools for bots and stuff, you know, because you can move AFK and idle accounts around and stuff, which might be a little bit awkward. I think that there's a whole area of gameplay that hasn't been touched by mounts, and that's the idea of integrating mounts into combat a little bit more. Maybe the mount gets a combat skill, as we mentioned before, like a special action where they get to throw a spear, for example. Maybe they should revisit that idea. Or more precisely, I like the idea of mounts that you can actually get on to evade mechanics during raid encounters or fractals, you know, actually being able to get on some kind of rental while a fight is happening, and just to integrate them into the experience. I always think of that Heart of Thorns mission in the Auric Basin where you're running away from Foul Lane and you get like all the super powered glint wing skins and stuff like that. And I kind of look at that and I think if that instance had been done during the Path of Fire era, they would have been doing something with us getting on mounts more. And in fact, POF itself did do it before the Balthazar fight. You're on the mounts fleeing through Amnoon, but they never quite combined the actual idea of combat phases right with the mounts. What they did in Path of Fire was a little bit more like Halo's Warthog Run, for example, you know? So I think there's a lot of exciting stuff the devs could still do, and I think it would be a shame to see End of Dragons turn its back completely on them. You know, I've been a big advocate for diminishing access to them in the open world and for all these exploration reasons, but I do still think it would be a shame if they were completely missing. And a great way to have them still be involved is to add a new one. You've got the Siege Turtles, are a kind of a big no-brainer to me. And you know, we mentioned in a recent video the idea that they could take one of the factions, the Kurziks or Luxons, and just kill them, create some asymmetry or something. Maybe this would be an interesting idea. When we visit Cantha, there are no Kurziks left. There's no Echovald Forest stuff going on. There are no Juggernauts, and that allows the devs to fully focus on the idea of Siege Turtles and riding around on these big turtles, and that becomes the mount. and maybe it has some kind of special movement baked into that environment. Look, I grant you, it is very tricky. Even just the idea of a turtle mount, like, that's a mount that would be slow moving, so why the hell would you get on one? The idea of breaking walls has already been done. I mean, there's a lot of weird, complicated stuff going on here, because when you think about the beetle and breaking walls, you know, roller beetles really are a Canthan thing. So what are they going to do with those in End of Dragons? I actually think it would be a really good idea to add a second opportunity for a roller beetle mount in this area of the world because of the Canthan ties, because it would mean they could do more mount races at XPAC launch, which would also be great, but also because that mount being tied to that specific Living World release just seems so weird to me now. You know, like, they did that thing where Corner was free for, like, huge lengths of time. What, are they just going to keep doing that again and again and again? It's so strange. The Sky Scale is strange in all of those similar reasons, but at least that's like a whole season kind of thing. Which, by the way, is incredibly inaccessible as time goes forward. If you think about it, all the gem gates to get a Sky Scale. And now, if we're considering this idea that there will be a parallel acquisition method for a roller beetle, well, surely there can be parallel methods for raptors and springers and everything, right? I mean, they don't necessarily fit. The idea of a jackal and Cantha is really weird. But it's something we put on the table a couple of End of Dragons dailies ago, and I still think is something that they might pursue to keep mounts as an influence, even if they don't add a totally new one. Because this question is very legitimate. What the hell do they do that's compelling? A lore question here from Aries Errant Knight says, do you think the gods will ever reappear in End of Dragons? We were told that they left, but the relationship between the Canthan humans and the gods could be explored further. Well, this is a funny one. I think, yes, it could be explored further. What people in playing Guild Wars 2 might not realize is that the original game had quite a lot of lore that specifically changed the interpretation of the gods based in which region you're in. So what you got to remember is Guild Wars 1 only had humans as a playable race. They only had humans at launch with prophecies, and then again when factions came out, they made the decision to not add a new race. Maybe early in 2006 they had some concept for Tengu being playable, and then they turned their back on it years ago. That would be a real amazing thing to hear. But they kept with just humans. And so when we're in this whole new area of the world, they did something quite clever. They said, well, look, IRL, you can have the same, like, deity, but if you are looking at a very distant culture, they tend to have different beliefs about that deity. They represent it in slightly different ways, and their understanding of what it's all about changes. So that's what they did for factions. It was incredibly authentic and cool feeling to see, say, a statue of Melandru in factions looked different to a depiction of Melandru from core Tyria. The Canthans believed that Melandru looked different because it's been so many years since they walked among the gods, no one really knew anymore, especially because of the Malkor statue thing, but that was more Guild Wars 2 lore. So they had these different interpretations, and now I get this comment and they're like, yeah, they could dive into that a bit more. But you got to understand, they also did that for Nightfall. Nightfall had its own variations on the Pantheon and the way that the priests act around those gods and so on. And what did we see in Path of Fire? Did they really lean into that, even though Path of Fire was seriously about the human gods? Well, they didn't. So I don't know how deep they'll go. Lissa is really the one big topic I think that this expansion could and would go into. Even if they do a Lissa thing, they explain Lissa's mirror, they explain who maybe replaced Balthazar in the Pantheon, possibly they go that far. Even if they explain some of this stuff, I do not want it to be a big part of this story. Not really. And the more hands-off they are, the better. That allows Lissa to stay as an enigma, helps them dodge unsatisfactory resolutions. So I kind of want them to be hands-off. And I want to focus more on about how these other races are impacted by this distant human-centered land. And I would much rather, I really would pick more Norn's story in End of Dragons than God's story in End of Dragons. Seriously. Unless, the one caveat is unless since Path of Fire's release, a bunch of those lore devs at the studio have hammered out this incredible internal wiki, and they know all the answers. There's nothing that's vague or foggy in their minds. It's hammered in, it's concrete, and it's beautiful, and it works. And if they really do have a very cohesive, complete picture, which I don't believe they do, but if they had done that, if they had constructed everything, then fine, give me some good stuff with the gods. But that aside, I would rather they do not explore this stuff too much further. So here's a comment that's kind of against me, but I love it, and I think that this person's totally right. Strange94179 says, it's a bit sad that part that you liked about mount adoption license systems is one of the ickiest parts of that scheme. The sound effects, the flashy lights and graphics, the closed door in anticipation of the reward. That is all a slot machines 101 and how to predate on easily compulsed. It's easy to dismiss since we are not the targets. The target is the people with low inhibition control, younger audiences, problem gamblers, the people that the gaming industry so endearingly likes to dehumanize as whales. We can debate endlessly if that is the intention of ArenaNet or their corporate owners, but that is undoubtedly the effect of those systems. You know, this is ludicrously strongly worded. I do think you're right, though. I really do. You know, one of the kind of... Oh, this is dicey. I don't want to be, like, offensive or anything, but one of the standard things you see, like, a lot of YouTubers and Twitchers and people who cover this game like to do is they'll get themselves a ton of Mount Adopt licenses, or, you know, ecto gambling, or black lion chests, which are doing the same thing, and they'll really lean into it, and they'll really, like, you know, drum roll and get everybody really excited and salivating before they open up. And I've always been a little bit scared of that. You know, I've done my fair share of it over time as well with the master streams. Getting all those unlocks means interfacing with these systems, so I've reshared them out. But I've always felt a bit weird about that stuff because, yeah, I do think it's predatory to a certain degree. I mean, I think the language is too strong. I'm a little bit more easygoing about this stuff. I'm not quite as hysterical as I think you find the general gamer on these topics. But, yeah, you're right. It is weird for me to compliment that. And I will compliment it because clearly they did put the effort in and they did a good job. And it feels fun and it feels unique and different and special to be buying them out and go through that UI. But you're definitely right about the intention of the system. At the end of the day, it's to fund the game. And you can't escape how important that is in this kind of monetization scheme, even with a box sale, which is the world we're living in. We're not totally free to play. Even with a box sale over these long time frames, we are benefiting and we are economically reliant on people who are interfacing with the gem store, and the more that they can encourage these, so to speak, whales and generate new whales, you know, the majority is benefiting from that, and that's just the cold hard reality of the world we're in. You know, when I did my legendary weapon video, I think I made an idle joke comment. I talked about people buying Gen 1 legendaries with Mummy's credit card, but they actually have to work for Gen 2. And I got a comment from someone who said, you know, why do you do that? Why do you shame people who are using the gem store? This is actually needed to fund the game. Is it right that you sit there and make fun of them? And it's weird because as kind of a core Guild Wars 2 gamer, my instinct is always to look down on that. And my instinct is always to feel snobby about it. And I do look at the entire reward system as broken fundamentally on some levels because of the gem store. But I am kind of at the point where I'm thinking, well, maybe I need to reconsider. I don't know, these topics are big. I really do think they're big, and not enough people engage in them. It's not really strictly about End of Dragons, but I'm curious on some of your perspectives about this. Oh, and I would say, it's not just young people. It's not just kids with Mummy's credit card. A lot of them are adults with pretty decent jobs that are easily compulsed and do have low inhibition control. I tend to feel like let adults make their decisions if that's how they want to spend their money. And you want to encourage them to spend more, well, welcome to the real world. That's how it works. It's not up to the gem store to police how much people are going to spend on it, is it? I mean, do you ask that of any other storefront in any other area of the world? Not generally. Next, we have a dilemma for me. I love this. Okay, you have to pick one. Expansion of the scale of Heart of Thorns and Path of Fire. I'll say that it's a Path of Fire scale, nice and big. Without the rushed finish. So you get the whole story properly implemented as they wanted. So we're talking about like a Heart of Thorns with the Malik story intact and the Nightmare Court stuff intact and so on. But there is no extra race. There's no new race in this expansion. Or you do get an extra race, maybe even 2, with 5+ leveling maps and new 1-to-8 story for that race. But the primary expansion story is only 1 act, with half maps and reduced number of masteries, with the rest delivered through Living World. Wow. Okay, I know which one I would pick. And, well, okay, hold on though. Yeah, no, I know which one I'd pick. I would pick the second one. I think it's pretty easy for me. The first one is very tempting. You're basically telling me that would be a perfect expansion as far as the current course is gone. You know, this is a fully realized expansion that is comparable to the pre-existing expansions, and that is very, very compelling. I think that is where the veterans will lean, the people who aren't too interested in the overall health of the game, the kind of players that you find in World versus World who get mad because noobs are around and they don't really care about growing Guild Wars 2. They just care about their own fun in it. You know, the rest of the population be damned, which is 99% of the player base. Maybe not 99, but a huge proportion. I think they'll all go for option 1. Really, I do. A lot of people, if you really go and you talk to them about new races and they're already in Guild Wars, they'll say, well, what's the point? It's not going to change anything. It's just cosmetic, right? Because they're that tunnel vision. They're that focused on just the experience it would offer them and how they consume the game right now. So I think they would all like option 1. I'm going to say option 2, though, because, again, I really desperately believe in the potential of getting all these new people in and having something real for them to play. You know, I'm talking to someone on Discord at the moment who is working on shaders and graphics and, you know, a new post-processing and filters along the lines of what we've seen over the years with Sweet Effects and Reshade and stuff. And we'll see if it goes anywhere. But he made a point to me saying, look, I think this is really important because whenever I try to get a new person into Guild Wars 2, they say it looks old. They say it looks bad and it holds them back because people are fundamentally superficial. And here's the thing, if End of Dragons has this really heavy focus on new races with new maps and new story, it can all look at a very high standard. Some of those POF areas are gorgeous. If those were the places you were standing in when you were defending Shaymore, you wouldn't have all these, like, Zoomers, basically, young kids and superficially minded people leaving because it wouldn't look old anymore. So I really do believe in this idea, and I think that as long as it had the proper marketing and ArenaNet was clear to the vets that this isn't really an X-Pack for you as much as it is for others, as long as there isn't a misunderstanding there, I think you could get it out and you could do real good. But you have to be so transparent about your intentions. If all the vets come into this option 2 expecting a full-length expansion comparable with Heart of Thorns and POF, and then they only get 1 act, they're going to flip the table, man. They really are. But, you know, you make sure everybody understands. And hell yeah, a new race, maybe 2, 5 leveling maps. I get a whole new story that will take me from 1 to 80. And that doesn't mean it has to be the length of the Corteria stuff. But it's a proper story, living world quality story, all the way up. I get to level up, which is its own kind of fun experience, while also experiencing the new expertise they have since Living World Season 3. You'll notice that you can't do that in Guild Wars 2. You can't have all those kind of gear progression and leveling fun moments and hero challenge acquisition and stuff like that, really, under very, very high quality content because it's all core, and core is not as high quality content. And then, you know, there's other stuff about the way hero challenges work that kind of means you instantly get your elite spec when the X-Pack comes out as a veteran. There are kind of other topics. So, yes, I think option 2 is what I would go for, but with the caveat that they properly explain to the vets who they're aiming at. And finally for today, we have Thomas, who says, WP, do you think we will see or explore the Harvest Temple in End of Dragons? And if so, what kind of state do you think we'll find it in? Sunken below a molten jade sea? Crushed by the Jade, inhabited by Kunavang, reduced to rubble or reclaimed by the Dragon Empire Cantha? As a lore and world-building fan, I'd love to see that historically important location. The Harvest Temple is kind of interesting because in the original game, you have some flashback sequences where you get to see it. And it's a lot bigger and more interesting than when you finally visit it as an outpost after the Unwaking Waters mission, and it's a lot smaller. And then again, in the CGI trailer for Factions, it looks different again. In fact, I'll probably put that CGI trailer in the footage today. That might be fun. It looks different again. So Guild Wars 2, I think, could play with the design, keep the general idea of it being one of these, like, red tower kind of things. I think in the lore as well, they also talk about Kunavang having been underground in there. And there's, like, these suggestions that there's all these places. So I would very much like to go there again. One of the things I'm really excited about with End of Dragons, not just here, but also with Kaineng, is the fact there are proper interiors now. There are small-scale environments we can go to, little rooms that you can peek and peer around in and feel closed in, which means the Harvest Temple, as it was in Guild Wars 1, it was basically a concrete slab. That's what it was. You could walk around on a concrete slab, and you could look up and see that there were other areas, but there wasn't much else going on. In Guild Wars 2, they could properly allow you to explore it and climb it. You know what I think of? Siren's Landing and that jumping puzzle that was that epic tower stretching up to the sky. Imagine that, but it's the Harvest Temple. And when you're looking down, it's not just like the ruins of ore. It's this immense, massive whirlpool of jade. Think about this. You know in Guild Wars 2, when you go to the Tomb of the Primeval Kings, and it's enormous in the sequel, like they bumped the scale up massively just to continue to give you that sense of it being big now that the camera can be zoomed out and stuff. The environment artist did so good in POF with that. Imagine that treatment, but for the Harvest Temple now. So you have a jumping puzzle, the scale of that Siren's Landing one, and also the whirlpool that surrounds it, frozen in jade, is scaled up as well. Oh, it would be so good. You could do a whole map about climbing it. All right, now I'm getting a bit silly. But it would be fantastic, and I'd definitely like to see it. On the other hand, they might do it a bit like the Realm of Torment was treated in POF. Did we get to go into that portal at any point in Living World? No. At any point in the story? No, not really. I mean, we did have moments going to the Mist, so look, I'm not holding it against them that bad. But it wasn't even in the main story in the end. Maybe similar situation here. Oh, it burned down. Sorry, guys. Maybe we won't even get that far south. Again, because that was kind of a POF thing. We did get to go to the Nightfall regions, but not that far down in them. Maybe similar thing here, because the Harvest Temple is very far away. I suppose there's an interesting idea we might start the expansion not at the northern coasts, but somewhere else. I still like the idea of the Icebrood Saga takes us to that hole that goes down forever. We jump in the hole and we come out of Cantha. Or maybe you come out of a mine in the Echo-Valled Forest with the dredge. There's any kind of number of starting points that might mean that it's a viable location, but it is very far away. Something to think about. Well, there you have it, guys. That's End of Dragons Daily. Please keep your miscellaneous comments coming down. I will be grabbing those very soon, but tomorrow we'll continue with the idea of what they can mechanically do on this new area and what the implementation questions of a new race. Thank you, everybody. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one very soon. Don't forget, if you join me on Patreon, then you can get the next episode right now. It's already live. And again, I'll say to anybody who contributed to the PC fund, if that was gratifying to you at all, please do consider Patreon. I know it's kind of a bit off-putting because it's a monthly thing, but that's exactly why it's so important to me, because it's a real baseline that I can actually figure out what I've got and where I'm going. In any case, no matter what you guys choose to do, above all, I just hope to see you tomorrow. Take care, guys.